Hey everybody, TacticAngel here to talk a little bit about World of Warships Legends. And as you can see in the game, I am playing in a Fubuki on my PlayStation 4 during the first season of Ranked Battles. I'll go ahead and put my commander up on the screen so you can see what I've been working with, and I'm just going to leave some opinions about how I thought Ranked Battles went. Some things I think can be improved upon, and a little about what ships I noticed were most effective. I'm actually going to address those in reverse order. So here we go. So in interest of full disclosure, I did finish my progression to rank 1, but I'm not really the type of player who really loves ranked battles. I mostly ignored it on World of Tanks, and that's been made a lot easier to ignore when it seems like all they ever do anymore is tier 10 ranked battles over and over again on the smallest maps imaginable. As some of you know, most of what I do on this channel is try to give people a little bit of history on ships, some honest analysis, and a few laughs along the way. I have posted some of my better games, but I hope you all see that I'm really not here to try to make myself look good. So if you're listening to me and you're thinking, man, TacticAngel just shouldn't play ranked battles, well, yeah, maybe? I don't know. Part of the reason why I'm doing this is that I'd like to hear your opinions down in the comments. Overall, I did have a few surprises. I actually expected cruisers to do quite a bit better than they did, but as I played, I wasn't actually all that surprised when they all but vanished from my games. They seemed a little more plentiful in the rank 10 through 6, but they were so hilariously scarce in my games from rank 5 through 1 that I actually started up a spreadsheet to try to put some numbers to the amount of fun that I really wasn't having. For one, I think the choices for battleships at this tier were pretty obvious. The Arizona, the Warspite, and the Bayern. The Arizona is just tough as nails, and she has 12 fairly accurate guns. The other two ships are on there because they have absurdly large guns for their tier, which more or less means that they can violate any part of any cruiser at any angle from any range. The only real question is whether or not you can hit one. The Bayern may seem like a curious ship to recommend because of German accuracy and its lack of a spotter plane, but it's kind of a trade-off here when you look at the relative vulnerability of the Queen Elizabeth class battleships. The New Mexico does pretty well as well, though it trades a little bit of protection that the Arizona has for higher DPM. From what I could tell, it was mostly the Japanese battleships that struggled in most games. The cruisers at tier 5 are also a little wonky because you have the Pensacola, which is the transition ship from the light cruisers into the heavy cruisers that the American battleship line becomes. It has a lot of very powerful guns for its tier, but she's not a great ship for really dealing with destroyers due to its super lazy turrets. She can definitely hurt battleships, but she has just enough armor to make sure that every 16-inch shell definitely detonates inside the ship rather than over-penetrating it. Still, I think she turned out to probably be the most effective of the tech tree cruisers. I actually thought that would go to the Aoba, but what do I know? My experience with the Aoba is that you're rarely going to have more than 4 guns facing anything at any one time. It's actually pretty hard to get enough hits to make the boat work for you with a bunch of thirsty battleships in range. Due to her limited number of guns and also slow turret traverse, she's also not really all that good at handling destroyers. That leaves the de Grasse and La Galissonière. Let's say I wasn't really surprised that the de Grasse seemed to be the best cruiser performing in ranked battles, while I did see one or two La Galissonières do reasonably well. The ship was still mostly a submarine waiting to happen. I didn't really see much better from the Nuremberg, and that really only leaves the Graf Spee to talk about. And I mean, I love that ship, and you're a complete boss if you want to play her in ranked battles. Hats off to you, brother, but I wouldn't pretend what you're doing is a good idea. And then, of course, the destroyers, which were the most common ships in all of my games. It's usually not all that surprising that destroyers would be popular if you know you're going to be playing domination, You know that you're going to want something fast and stealthy to take bases, and if the battleships successfully bully enough cruiser players out of the matchmaker, then it's only going to be even better hunting for you. Really, I wasn't all that surprised that the Gaeta, T-61, and the Fubuki did really well in this ranked season. They're very stealthy boats with decent torpedoes. The Fubuki's torpedo complement kind of speaks for itself, so I won't go into that too much. Plus, I think you're kind of getting enough Fubuki in this video. I think if you're paying attention to, this is one of 2 or 3 games I think I played in it during ranked. Yeah, I'm wearing the black camo on it because, fun fact, I don't really like the color green. Anyway, back to the boats. I thought that the Benson might actually have a better showing, but because it has less stealth potential, you actually have to play a little less aggressively than you usually do in ranked. A lot of the maps have pretty large amounts of unobstructed firing ranges, and in particular, Strait does. You'll probably excel if you can bully isolated destroyers, but definitely try never to be the centerpiece of a larger gunfight. I think a lot of the Icarus players struggled with this season, probably because they're very similar to the German DDs. While they might have a little more in terms of utility with single-fire torpedoes and their fast-use smoke, they are a hair bit more visible. They have less firepower, and they have quite a bit less HP. My personal choice here was the T-61 because it has permanent camo. I am very cheap, and the Hydro was super useful, particularly on Strait when you can get into B and pop that Hydro early, hopefully saving your teammates who are paying a little bit of attention their lives. I think there are a couple of things that I would definitely suggest to help improve ranked battles moving forward. I have a list of 5 things, but really I'd like some mostly positive discussion in the comment section if you agree, and by all means feel free to add your own ideas. I know sometimes the folks over at Wargaming do watch my videos. I don't know if they read the comments, but I super hope they do sometimes. And I do want these ranked battles to be successful for the benefit of everybody in the game, even if they're not really usually my cup of tea. So my suggestions. Number 1, it would be very nice if PlayStation and Xbox users could talk to one another. I'm not going to pretend that this is fair criticism. I'm really happy with the crossplay, and I'm really glad this can help make matchmaking a little better for people who live in distant time zones. I hope Wargaming can take this to the next level by the time we see ranked battles again, so everyone on the team can talk to one another. That said, part of this is really on us as players because we do have the comm wheel, and no one really uses that, and I'm not sure how much more benefit we would get being able to talk to one another when we can't even bother to use that. Number 2, I think for Tier 5 to work in ranked, there have to be more viable cruisers in the game, or the cruisers that we do have need to be a little bit more competitive with the battleships that they're likely to face. And I might be wrong about this, but I think this is actually probably an issue that is particular to Tier 5, or at least strongest felt at Tier 5, just because the ships that we have in this level are somewhat awkward with generally slow turret traverse speeds. When I look at Tier 6 and Tier 4, I think there's a little bit more balance in both directions because the mix of heavy and light cruisers is that not all light cruisers are glass cannons, and several of the heavy cruisers are actually better counters against DDs than the cruisers that we see at Tier 5. So hopefully in the upcoming season, it'll be a little bit more balanced starting on Monday. Number 3, maybe apply some limitation to the composition of teams. I was actually kind of interested to see in the patch notes on the limit of destroyers that would be in any one game. I know that was a typo, but I'm fairly certain that in standard battles, you're unlikely to see any more than 5 ships of any one class. And usually when that does happen, people just start swearing and taking screenshots to share on Reddit or social media, etc. Nobody really likes that. So I would think that in a 7-person game, you wouldn't want more than 3 ships of any one class. My only fear with this sort of suggestion is that doing something like this might mean that every game has 3 destroyers, but at least every game would have 1 cruiser. Number 4, do something about straight. I thought this configuration was interesting for about 1 or 2 games, but once people figured out what the strategy is going to be here, it's a really uninteresting map to play. And the fact that there is only a gap on the east side of the map and none on the west really does favor the northeast spawn generally. And number 5, last but not least, please do something about divisions. My initial thought is just don't allow them, because that does kind of slant the game, and it doesn't really reflect on an individual's talent or dedication if they're relying on other people to help lift them up. I know it's the easy solution, but if you're going to allow them, then try not to segregate the matchmaking, because that's a real bummer when you're not allowed to play with your friends. And not allowing me to help my friends after I've finished is also something of a killjoy. So I'd let the more leveled players drag the lower level players into matchmaking that will probably be worse for them, in quotes, worse. And then let players help their friends, which is after all what friends are for. Or, like I said, just turn it off entirely. That way you avoid the frustration. So with the last few days of Season 1 ticking down, I'm going to maybe leave a few suggestions on how I'd go about playing this, just for those of you who might be still trying to get to rank 1, or any higher rank for that matter. Number 1. Probably the best thing about this sort of setup is that the game is really encouraging you to be more aggressive and to play the objectives. In fact, most of the games I've played were actually decided by points and not specifically kills. You want to keep yourself in a place where you can defend, contest, and even take capture points when you're able. If you start sailing around the edges of the map, most of the time what you're doing is asking your team to win a 6-on-7, and that's probably not going to happen. Number 2, related, that said, limit your aggression. Don't overextend yourself. Don't YOLO, man. You can usually tell if you're overextended by if you're likely to be shot by 2 or more enemy ships that are more than 90 degrees away from one another, and especially if you're outnumbered. Number 3, points are more important than damage. And I say this mostly for the DD players out there. Actually, when I started playing this game, I had several really high damage games, and I was averaging actually quite a bit more than my average in standard battle for damage, which, considering that I can play a tier 7 game in standard battle, means quite a bit of damage at tier 5. But doing a lot of damage didn't mean I won games, and particularly when you're a destroyer, capturing a base or spotting another destroyer is often more useful than going on some safari for a battleship. It may mean that by the end of the game you only score 3,000 damage, but there's not even a 1 in 7 chance that you'll get 1 star if you lose the game. And number 4, never give up. This is actually particularly true if you're in a destroyer, and actually this is the reason why I'm showing you this game. My team was doing a lot of things that I did not necessarily agree with, but we stuck in there. By we, I mean I. That doesn't sound psychotic at all. Your weapons still work if you have 1 hit point, and even if you're going to die, for those battleship and cruiser commanders out there, the more time of your enemy that you can waste, the more time that gives your team to act without the attention of those enemies. That said, I'm not telling you that you should specifically waste people's time by prolonging the game, but I'm also not going to tell you that you owe it to anyone on the enemy team to let them kill you either. In any case, I hope you guys have found some of this gameplay interesting, even though I didn't really talk about it at all, and maybe you even enjoyed some of my commentary. I do look forward to the discussion down in the comments section. In any case, try to have fun out there, and I'll see you guys on the next one.